Welcome to Executive Insights for Life Sciences Innovators, and thanks for joining us. On this podcast, we'll explore leadership, innovation, and growth in the life sciences sector. I'm Don Alexander, founder of GeneCoda, a boutique executive search firm dedicated to connecting visionary leaders with life sciences companies shaping the future of therapeutics and scientific tools. On each episode, we'll dive into candid conversations with industry pioneers, uncovering strategies, insights, and real-world experiences that drive success in our industry. If you're interested in presenting as a guest of a future episode, please scan the barcode image at the top of my video frame and follow the instructions. Now I'm pleased to be joined by David Pass, the CEO of AltrixBio. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, David. David is a veteran of the diabetes and metabolic disease space with a career that spans clinical development, medical affairs, marketing, operations, and general management at multiple premier pharma and biotech companies. David started his career on the launch team for metformin at Bristol Myers Squibb, one of the most consequential diabetes medicines brought to market. He went on to lead major pharmaceutical commercial efforts at Johnson & Johnson, and more recently helped shape the landmark Boehringer Ingelheim and Lilly Diabetes Alliance, a trailblazing partnership between two powerhouse companies. Today, David is the CEO of AltrixBio, a Boston-based biotech on the verge of entering the clinic with a genuinely novel oral approach to treating metabolic disease. AltrixBio's lead program, AJN-003, is built on a clinically validated molecular scaffold designed to act locally in the gut without systemic exposure, targeting conditions including diabetes and obesity. The company has deep research roots at Mass General Brigham and Harvard and is advancing towards its first-in-human clinical trial in Australia. David brings a rare combination of depth in pharmacology, hands-on leadership, and patient-centered drive to fundamentally change how metabolic disease is treated. We're delighted to have him with us today. So thanks again, David.
Thank you.
Let's dive into a little bit more about your career. You spent more than 25 years across diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, pharma, biotech, digital health, to name a few. What drew you into cardiometabolic health, and why has this area remained such a consistent theme in your career?
Yeah, so appreciate the question. So for me, I guess I'd say I'm a science nerd at heart. I actually have a BS and a Doctor of Pharmacy. So for me, I really started from the clinical perspective. Actually, initially, I started in HIV clinical trial design, was actually my first job out of college. But in specifically what drew me into cardiometabolic diseases, it's a really unique intersection between very complex biology and high science, but also human behavior. And what makes that interesting is both are incredibly complex. And ultimately, it matters how people live their lives and how they change behavior and adapt based upon it. And for me, that melding of the science along with behavior change. And quite honestly, as you mentioned in your introduction, being on the launch team in medical affairs for metformin, which has been so consequential to the treatment of diabetes and metabolic diseases, really kind of set my path going forward.
That's great. Now, earlier in your career, as part of the introduction as well, you helped lead major diabetes commercialization efforts, including Lilly and Boehringer Ingelheim, rather, Diabetes Franchise Alliance. What did that specific experience teach you about bringing meaningful cardiometabolic innovation to patients?
Yeah, no, I think that first of all, getting the ability, the honor of getting to work with two really very different but very important pharmaceutical companies. They had very different views with regard to science, development, patient experience, quite honestly. And it taught me first and foremost the diversity of experience, the diversity in thinking, and the importance of ultimately staying open to a lot of different approaches. There's lots of different ways to get things done. And that was really important. And then second, the companies both very much focused on really cutting edge science. And meeting their patients where they are. And what was interesting is, Eli Lilly is a publicly traded American-based pharmaceutical company, and Boehringer Ingelheim is a privately held German company. So the different approaches really taught me a lot. And at the end of the day, when you meld this kind of cutting edge science and meeting patients where they were, I think what taught me most about kind of bringing meaningful cardiometabolic therapies to market was really, if you can't get the drug to the patient, if the patient can't tolerate it, if they don't see the benefit of the product, it's going to fail in the real world. So the gap, and sometimes the chasm between clinical medicine and clinical practice is critical to really changing the practice of medicine, and being able to see that both in how metformin changed the marketplace. And then the other is, Jardiance or empagliflozin, having been there for the launch of that product, as well as the landmark trials, really gave me the firsthand view of what is important to change the practice of medicine. And that's critical. It's both the science and the practical application.
Absolutely, the commercial, uptick there. So, what made AltrixBio the right company and mission for you at this point in your career?
Yeah, it was a great fit. It was a great fit for one, is it started with the science, a completely new mechanism of action for metabolic diseases, one that really went after the root cause of these co-traveling diseases, whether it be diabetes, obesity, liver disease, a host of other, downstream metabolic conditions. So that was really critical for me in terms of something that was new and innovative and it could change the landscape. The other was this dysfunctional gut signaling that's really driven by ultra processed foods, very high caloric Western diets, that's really changed the way in which we as a society are living. And what was interesting with regard to this new mechanism, this new science, was really removing the single riskiest step of development. And what I mean by that is, as you think about the failure rate of development, it's about 50% in terms of you thinking about the mechanism from a safety perspective and efficacy, where really the majority of dropouts occur. And the approach really took an existing scaffold, happy to talk about that in a sec, but an existing scaffold, change the physiochemical properties, but still able to reference that molecule. So it's a 505(b)2 pathway. So it's a very efficient way to get to market with a proven safety profile of a product. At the same time, having composition of matter. So marrying the best of those two worlds. So for me, just to summarize, it was about a new mechanism, the evolving science, understanding what was happening, and then the commercial realities of the efficient and really risk mitigated approach to market.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope you'll expand on that a bit. So for listeners who aren't deeply familiar with metabolic disease biology, how would you maybe explain AltrixBio's core technology, the thinking behind AJN-003?
Sure. No. So it's interesting. If you think about what and how much we eat, to my prior comments,
Hmm.
the body really, the majority of what we eat is processed in the upper part of the GI tract. And in order for the body to fully mount a metabolic response that is capable of, food needs to be able to move further down into duodenum and the jejunum. And most food we eat doesn't really fully engage the lower part of the jejunum or the lower part of the GI tract. So our inspiration really came from bariatric surgery. And this is important in terms of what stops people in their tracks when they learn this. 40% of people who have bariatric surgery and have diabetes, when they are discharged from the hospital, meaning they have not lost any weight, they just had the surgery, they're going home, 40% of them no longer need their diabetes medication. Let that sink in. That is the definition of transformation. That's the definition of what really is transformational in terms of disease altercation. And so when you think about that, surgery removes about 5 feet of the GI tract, bariatric surgery, about 5 feet of the upper GI, and shifts nutrient sensing distally. What we are doing from a pharmacologic perspective is we were looking to identify a compound, an existing compound, that pharmacologically would mimic some of those properties. And we identified sucralfate. Now, sucralfate, for those of you who don't know, sucralfate is a 40-year-old drug for peptic ulcer disease. It's got a very proven and strong safety and tolerability profile, and it attaches itself to diseased tissues, ulcers. We changed the physiochemical properties of sucralfate so it adhered to healthy tissue. So it transiently coats the upper part of the GI tract, hence it mimics some of those properties. And what we've seen preclinically is that really we see significant improvement in insulin sensitivity and meaningful weight loss. So we're very encouraged by what we've seen, and we're excited to get in the clinic to further demonstrate those properties.
It's really interesting. So the inspiration or the approach, I guess, really kind of draws inspiration from the metabolic effects that are observed, it sounds like, after bariatric surgery. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. And what's interesting is we looked at these 30 different compounds, trying to find a compound that would emulate a lot of those properties. And sucralfate, far and above, was the most effective one. And then we modified those properties to adhere not just to diseased tissue, but to healthy tissue. And as we modified the physiochemical properties, we also were able to identify new intellectual property, and those patents have been issued as well.
That's fantastic, Dave. And so, the route of administration, it sounds like it's an oral therapy. Is that?
Yeah. So what's interesting is it's oral therapy, taken chronically. It's not actually absorbed, so it actually coats the GI tract and then passes through the GI tract unchanged. So
Wow.
a capsule once or twice a day is how it would be administered.
How it would be administered. That's great. That's great news for patients potentially. So let's talk a little bit about the diabetes and obesity treatment landscape has changed dramatically with GLP-1s and related therapies. Where do you see the biggest remaining gaps for patients, physicians, and payers in the overall market, I guess?
Yeah, so the market has changed. I mean, when you think about the incretins, GLP-1s, GIP, and other mechanisms, they've generally transformed the diabetes marketplace, transformed it. But the clinical reality is that the majority, well, all classes of diabetes medications, after about 12 to 18 months, unfortunately, lose their efficacy. So the durability, the effect on A1C and other factors at about 12 to 18 months starts to subside. Actually, GLP-1s, GIPs probably go out to about 2 years, the most effective. The reality is, from a practical perspective, as I mentioned earlier, that most people don't stay on the medications that long, whether that be to tolerability, whether it be to the, as I said, the waning efficacy, the practical administration, the cost. Now, chronic persistence and compliance is not specific to GLP-1s or incretins. It is a chronic challenge in general. But specifically to this class of drugs, it's a challenge, and the payers take note, obviously. So to identify a therapy that will drive weight loss, improve, obviously, overall A1C, but is well tolerated, an oral medication really makes a difference. So for us, there's a huge unmet need. In addition, as you think about opportunities for new agents, having something that works synergistically alongside a metformin, alongside an SGLT2 a medication, as well as could be used with incretins, because the mechanism of AJN-003 is completely different. So fitting alongside early on in therapy makes a big difference as we think about where to target and where this product will be used.
Yeah, that's really great. So, yeah, I really appreciate you pointing out the kind of the real world adherence properties of any medication. Those can certainly be challenges. And so this seems very synergistic with some of the products that are readily available now on the
Yeah.
market. Let me ask you this: if as AltrixBio advances towards the clinic, what are the most important milestones over, say, the next year or two?
Yeah, so as we think about the next 12 to 24 months, we're looking to initiate our single ascending and multiple ascending dose studies. I think what's really important and interesting is in our discussion, in our pre-IND meeting with FDA, they encouraged us to, in addition to healthy volunteers for our single ascending dose, they told us we should focus on people with type 2 diabetes. Now, the reason that's important is we're going to get out of our phase 1 study efficacy data in our target population. So we'll get phase 2 light data. So that really will significantly de-risk the program because we're getting that data very early on in a small sample. So that's pretty important, not just to get the efficacy, but the efficacy in your target population very early on. So I would say that's really the most significant inflection point that we expect going forward over the next 12 months or so.
That's great. So if HN003 performs as hoped clinically, how would it change the way physicians think about treating type 2 diabetes and obesity?
Yeah, so our hope is really that by bringing AJN003 to market and focusing early on, and as you think about the comment I made earlier about the efficacy waning over time or durability, being able to treat earlier on in the disease synergistically, not competing with GLP-1s, but early on synergistically, really our goal is to prevent the delay of the disease. So it's not about treating a number. It's about preventing or helping to prevent progression in terms of going to insulin. And obviously, the more we can do that and treating earlier on, that makes a huge difference. And so having something that's well tolerated, oral, easily administered, and synergistic, we think has important significance in the treatment of type 2 diabetes, as well as other metabolic conditions.
That's great. Absolutely. Treating ahead of the curve. Cardiometabolic disease affects hundreds of millions of people globally, as I understand it. How
Yeah.
do you think about building therapies that are not only innovative, but scalable and accessible?
Yeah, so scalability. So the three founders of the company really have tremendous passion. I'm still actively involved on the board and in the company to really think about how to get to the masses. And the nice thing about AJN003 is the manufacturing process is efficient. It's pretty straightforward. So it gives us the ability to scale easily, to your question, Don, and really make it available broadly and affordably. So we think that because because of the manufacturing process, in addition to the efficacy tolerability that we spoke about, we think the ability to broadly see this not just in the US, but globally is very doable and something that we can clearly meet.
Fantastic. Dave, you've shared a lot with us today, and thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Ultimately, what do you hope AltrixBio contributes to the next chapter of cardiometabolic medicine?
Yeah. Well, I think, given my, I was very fortunate to get the experience of metformin, to get the experience of empagliflozin in terms of how it could change, the course of treatment for millions of people's lives. For AJN003, we think it has the potential to address not only type 2 diabetes, but in the broader sense, significant weight loss in terms of obesity, liver disease, as well as multiple other metabolic disorders. We also think there's significant opportunity from a drug delivery perspective in terms of delivering payload with a form of it, as well as other GI-related conditions that we're currently exploring from a pipeline perspective. So we're pretty excited about the future, and we think that there's a lot to be excited about in terms of the evolution of metabolic treatments.
Fantastic, Dave. So we have oftentimes on this podcast other entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial companies developing various types of therapeutic assets. For those listening in the biotech arena, what advice would you offer about building a company around a differentiated but still emerging therapeutic concept?
Yeah, so I think focus is really important in this current environment. There's no doubt about it. I think being on top of the cutting edge science, having a great team is critical. And I'm very fortunate. I have an amazing group of people to help lead the efforts. So having the right team is critical, the right focus, and then I think Don, to the questions you asked in terms of clear milestones, how you're de-risking the program, like we've discussed, is absolutely critical because the competition for investment is always a challenge, especially in this environment. But we think having a very focused program with a clear target in terms of the treatment continuum is really what makes the difference.
Yeah, that's fantastic. These are all things we see over and over again, Dave. Great, good answer. How can listeners learn more about Altrix Bio and follow the company's progress?
Yeah, so please, our website, altrixbio.com. So we are updating that web on the website regularly, and feel free to reach out. I think as our program continues to expand, having the right key opinion leaders involved, which we have some of the best key opinion leaders in the world involved in helping guide us. But being able to kind of follow us and having additional sites as we build out our program will also be critical. So please reach out. My contact information is on the website as well. So we look forward to really making a difference in the lives of people who are living with type 2 diabetes and other metabolic conditions.
That's great, Dave. Thank you for that. So that wraps up this episode of Executive Insights for Life Sciences Innovators. I appreciate you tuning in and hope you found today's conversation valuable. If you enjoyed the discussion, please be sure to leave a review and share it with your network. Please also mark your calendars for June 29th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time with Paul Krzyzak of Jaya Biosciences. Thanks for listening. I'll see you soon.